This meeting?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. And please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Here.
Ms. Crum-Miller? Here. Mr. Miller? Here. Mr. Liverman?
Here.
Ms. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Simon is absent. Mayor Lempert?
Here. And now please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have two sets of minutes this evening, the first for December 15th, 2014, and the second, January 6th, 2015. Are there any corrections for either sets of minutes, or is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
It's moved by Ms. Butler and seconded by Ms. Crum-Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Mayor, I just got a text that we're not on TV.
We have a new Bob McQueen tonight.
Bob McQueen. Bob McQueen Jr.
All right, let's just vote one more time so it's on the record because it was interrupted a little bit. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Can both sets of minutes pass unanimously. And now we will move on to comments from the public for items that are not already on the agenda. And we had a sign-up sheet, so we'll start with the folks who signed up. And I'd like to call up Mayor Jim Floyd.
Had I known, I would have started getting up 5 minutes ago. Madam Mayor and Council, please indulge me if you will. I just have kind of a precursor to what I'm about to say. For many years, our African American neighbors were relegated to the area of Princeton known as the Witherspoon neighborhood. These were our proud but segregated ancestors who also contributed to the Princeton we all love and cherish. Long before many of us migrated to Princeton, there was the historic segregated neighborhood known as the Witherspoon area. In fact, the main trail was known as African Alley, that is to say, Witherspoon Street, a pejorative although a historic designation for Witherspoon Street. This was the designated sections where the Negroes were permitted to live and provide for themselves. Such amenities as restaurants, stores, lodges, houses of worship, and even the schools were restricted to the segregated but still historic district. Historically, this is where we lived and survived, only to venture out to work at one of the institutions or in a private family home. While resenting segregation in this enlightened town, the residents worked hard and contributed to the town. If we were to describe the area in modern terms, we might say it was a mandated planned unit development. The neighborhood and its characteristics, qualities certainly is a historic district. Even under the harsh restraints of segregation, our ancestors helped to build not only this historical district, but the towns of Princeton. Witherspoon Street or African Alley both bear an historic past. Choose the name you prefer. They both bespeak history. A few minutes ago, I was made aware of the fact that there is consideration for the purchase of one of the historic structures known on the tax map, I guess, as 3133 Lytle Street. This particular structure was declared in a survey in 1980 as historical structure. It's now, as we understand it, I don't recall a public meeting, if so, I'm sorry I missed it, is now in the process of being considered for acquisition by the municipality and for the ultimate tear down and the extension of the Mary Moss Park. I hesitate to tell you how long I've been in Princeton, but I will. 1946, that means I have to tell you my age, but I won't. What I would love to see is someone pay some attention to the wishes and desires of the community. The mayor, in one of our recent appearances, said we must listen to the community. I hope that you will, in the interest of not tear down this house. This house can be restored, refurbished. It's a historical house, declared as such, and could be one that's used for affordable housing. I urge you not to tear it down, and I would like to pass on to you, unless someone else wants to make the pronouncement, the Historical Society rejected the potential action of tearing this house down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hendrik Davis.
Good afternoon or good evening. I want to speak to the same issue and to another one as it affects Lytle Street. I've been to council meetings numerous times with requests about Lytle Street. I want to thank you for putting one sign up at the corner of Lytle and John. That is indeed helped me minimize the number of times that I have to call the police department for people parking close to or in the crosswalk that's at the corner of Lytle and John. So most people are now obeying the sign, and I appreciate that much. I regret the fact that you are not getting the income that you've been able to generate by sending the police out at my request to have them ticket cars that do that. But the greater issue there, of course, was safety. The second thing is related to signs as well. I've requested that the signs that were taken down that regulate parking on Lytle Street be returned, and that they be put in conformance with the other signs in the neighborhood. I don't know where you are in your process of reviewing all of this, but I'm making that request again. Lytle Street is the only outlier street in the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood. You've tested it long enough. If for some reason you found that it needs to be, then please explain that in an open public meeting to us, why that street has to be an outlier street. Thank you for arranging a meeting of the neighbors to consider that, but let's see what I would like very much to know what your results are. As it pertains to 3331 Lytle Street, I note on your agenda here that there is a closed session for the discussion of potential land acquisition. If 3331 Lytle Street is a part of that package, I concur wholeheartedly with Mayor Floyd that you do purchase the property from the private developer, but that you do not purchase the property to expand Mary Moss Park. The park can perhaps be enhanced with improvements, but that house should not be torn down to affect that change. I strongly urge you to not do that. There's a tremendous need for affordable housing in this community, not just in our neighborhood, but our neighborhood has been very open and actually happy to do all that we can to accommodate and to build affordable housing. And I think that that would be a good use of that property if the current owner is not willing to build affordable housing or wants to build what in effect would be two houses on 1.5 lot, which would not be, well, he would need to get a tremendous number of variances to be able to do that. So, but I encourage you to continue to pursue purchase of that property, but not for the purpose of tearing the house down and expanding Mary Moss Park. That park, as you will hear from others, hopefully tonight, and when you do have public, transparent discussions about activities that happen not only in this neighborhood, but throughout the neighborhood, throughout the community, you'll hear that that park has significant historic meaning for many people in the neighborhood based on what it is now. I live cat-a-corner across from the park, and I enjoy seeing the young children, not just from the nursery school, but from many parts of the neighborhood, and even from now the new houses, apartments at the university's property come to Mary Moss Park to play. It's a wonderful thing. And so I think by tearing down the house, expanding it, you will actually be destroying a significant piece of history, not just with the house, but with the park. And so I encourage you to really don't do it and to think very carefully about it. I also further encourage you, as you've heard from others, to vet some of your wonderful ideas with people in the neighborhoods, not just in the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood, but in the other neighborhoods. I don't know where this idea came from. The basic idea of buying the property, I think, is a good one. The idea of tearing down the house and basically demolishing an historic house and park to rebuild it is not a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Cromwell?
Oh, I think there might be some confusion. This is on the agenda for tonight, Mr. Davis. We're going to, there's...
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, okay, it's number 10 on the agenda, the ordinance that authorizes acquiring the property, or spending the money to acquire it. That's number 10, just for anyone else here.
That's a different property. It's on Cleveland Lane.
That's what?
It says that's Cleveland Lane. That's all.
No, it's the first public hearing.
Okay. About that property?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
So the closed sessions are about other properties,
correct.
and we're not allowed to be there, right?
No,
we're gonna talk
it's,
about it.
Right, because we have things on closed sessions that involve negotiations over pricing and other things, that if we do it in the public, then we might end up with a less advantageous price for the municipality. We will be getting to this public hearing in a little bit, but just also to clarify, I believe the way we found out about this property was the permits for demolition were filed, and that's how we found out. So it's not the municipality suggesting the demolition, is that the demolition was already in process by the developer, and that...
I'm sorry to have to come back up. So the permits have been filed for demolition?
I believe so.
Okay.
Is there some-
I was just at the meeting next door, and my suggestion to the Historic Preservation Committee and to the council person that was there, and now to all of you, is that you deny that request to demolish the property. Put it on record. Deny the request to demolish the property, to demolish the house, because we could walk out of, that was my question to Mr. Kaiser. Can the private owner tonight go ahead and demolish the property? And if those permits have been approved, I think maybe we'll have to post centuries to make sure that the house is not demolished or otherwise torched.
Okay, well, I don't know if somebody can give an update on what the status of that is, if anybody knows, if they've...
I will address, one issue I will address in terms of any permit, because the property is not in a historic district. I know there's consideration for a district. The town does not have the ability to prevent any property owner from taking out a permit if they meet all the requirements of the Uniform Construction Code. So at this point, If they were to come in with a permit, we could not deny that permit just based on the law.
Okay, so the mayor just said the permits have been issued.
Oh, I didn't say that. I was asking a question.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
Oh, I think they've applied for...
They've applied for them.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I don't know the status of them.
All right. Put that on the back burner for a long time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment? Yeah, please.
Good evening. It's Henry Singer from Princeton. And I just have a brief comment. Sorry. Today has been a wonderful day in terms of turning the corner on hopefully a very tough winter. And I want to, preface my comments to say that I think the town has done a great job through many events, cold weather and snow and hail and all kinds of things, keeping us informed about the things that were going on, advising us to keep our cars off the street and so on. And I certainly know the folks actually out at the coalface are driving the vehicles through the night, and I appreciate all of that. I think it's unfortunate that on this past Friday, it seemed to be that something intervened, that the cleanup job wasn't quite up to the standard of the rest of the season. The point I want to make is not necessarily to because I don't know the facts behind that, to assert any blame or anything like that. It's actually that I don't know the facts, and that all the good communication that went on leading up to the storm, there wasn't some explanation to the town about what's going on. The only thing I really ended up hearing was that school was canceled and my kids were home yet another day. And, maybe it's unavoidable, but I think the great communication that we've had in advance of the storm or even during the storm, it says, oh, by the way, the rubbish won't be collected, it'll be collected another date. And we had some good updates there. Let us know if things aren't going according to plan, we run short of salt or sand or whatever it might be, because I think folks really would like to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, come on up.
Hi, I'm Barb Blumenthal. I want to talk about the pipeline. This is just a quick update.
Just make sure you're speaking right directly into the mic. So,
Okay, this is a quick update about the pipeline. We're waiting for NJDEP to make a decision on permits. That'll happen on March 18th or sooner, so it could happen sooner. And we know that Transco is anxious to start cutting trees as soon as possible. We do have an agreement with Bob Kaiser, however, that they will not touch any trees in Princeton until March 23rd. So I want to make sure that residents know that. If they notice any activity going on between now and March 23rd, it should not be happening. They can take pictures of vehicles and license plates and do all of those things so that we can report anything that happens in the meantime. And today, FERC issued permission for them to go ahead and start cutting trees in New Jersey in upland areas, which is problematic because NJDEP disagrees with that and hasn't themselves said that that's okay. So there's a lot of sort of uncertainty about whether they can or cannot, but we're clear in Princeton that they cannot until March 23rd. And we should just be respectful of the fact that in late January, mysteriously, 5 trees were marked, the road was painted, and then the trees were taken down. 5 trees right exactly where Transco plans to build an anode bed. And they say they didn't do it. So just because there have been some mysterious activities for which nobody seems to be responsible, I think it's important for the community to notice. So we did notice that incident, took pictures immediately, informed NJDEP, but that kind of vigilance needs to happen over the next 2 weeks.
yeah, Mr. Kaiser?
If I could just provide an update. In discussions with Transco, they have agreed to hold a neighborhood meeting here in this room on Tuesday, March 24th, and they've agreed that there will not be any tree cutting until after that meeting. As Barbara has indicated, they would like to get started soon after that meeting. they would do the tree cutting first, and then they're planning, if they do get the approvals that they're looking for, to start putting the pipe in the ground beginning May 1st, and then have the major work completed in a 5 to 6 week period of time. But everything hinges on the DEP approval at this point. But again, the neighborhood meeting will be here Tuesday, March 24th, beginning at 7 o'clock.
Barbara, can I ask a question? What is the point of holding them off? I mean, if they get, is it possible that they get the approval before March 23rd and they'll still wait till the 24th?
I can comment, yes. They've indicated they've advised that they will wait. And the thinking is that we can have the neighborhood meetings so neighbors who are affected can know what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and when it's going to happen. A couple of things that we're looking to do prior to that is actually walk the pipeline to confirm exactly which trees are to be removed and those that are to stay. The plan that we've received shows approximately 120 trees that will be removed. In our
240. That plan is 240 trees.
And in our discussions with them, they've indicated that they feel that even though some of those trees are marked on the plan, they can be saved. So we want to work all that out prior to the neighborhood meeting so there could be an accurate representation as to what trees are going to be removed and what the timing of such would be.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this, and to Mr. Kaiser, too. Yep, come on.
John Heilner from Library Place. A suggestion and a quick comment. So number 10 says ordinance public hearings, and it's got the block number and the lot number. But those of us who are concerned with 3133 Lytle Street didn't have a clue, that was the property. So if at all possible in the future, if agendas for the council could actually reference a street number, if that's appropriate, in this case I think it is, that would be real helpful. And I know you don't want to get into much depth on that, but since this was sort of not intentionally, but a little bit hidden, those of us in other parts of the community, not just Witherspoon-Jackson, feel very strongly that a house like this should be saved. And I won't go into all the detail. Ms. Butler was in the meeting with the HPC just now. But very briefly, the house was built in 1870. It's got historic features that were common at the time, such as the pieces under the roof line, the porch with its supporting structure for the roof of the porch. And it's really, truly, if you look at the picture of it, I don't know if any of you have yet, except Joe, it's really just a classic of that period. So I would just urge the council, as they pursue their whole thinking on this, to think outside the box. Mr. DeShield alerted us that there may not be much money for affordable housing, but I guess I would have a two-step process in mind on that. One would be to review the affordable housing funds, and secondly, if that were not possible, although I suspect the property could be purchased at a very low price, because I'm sure the current owner purchased it at a very low price. If that were not possible, this could be very low-cost market rate housing that in fact could be refurbished by a smaller contractor, somebody who doesn't do the $1 million plus type buildings, and made into a very livable two-family house at a low market rate, either as a rental or to be purchased. So just I would ask you to think outside the box as you think about how you're going to fund something like that. It could actually be a town purchase and then a sale to somebody who's willing to do that. But I suspect the total cost is very low. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will have a public hearing on this topic in probably about a half hour. But is there anybody else who'd like to speak on any items that are not already on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and we have a proclamation for the, thank you for the point about putting the address on here, and I think that it was a good point, and we'll try to remember to do that. So we have a proclamation for this evening on National Poison Prevention Week, which is March 15th through 21st, whereas Congress designated the third full week in March to be National Poison Prevention Week in 1961, and since then, this week has helped to raise national awareness of the dangers of potentially poisonous medicines, household chemicals, and other substances. And whereas poison centers across the country will focus the public's attention on identifying poisoning hazards at home, as well as learning ways to prevent poisoning emergencies. And whereas the majority of poisoning deaths occur in adults ages 20 to 59, and whereas every poisoning is preventable, from the youngest to the oldest, all people and even pets are at risk. Whereas the New Jersey Poison Information and Education System, a division of the Department of Preventative Medicine and Community Health, New Jersey Medical School at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, provides free expert medical advice, drug information, and poison prevention education to New Jersey residents through the 800-222-1222 Poison Help Hotline. And whereas all services are free, confidential, multilingual, and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, even during bouts of Mother Nature. And whereas the Poison Center is instrumental in managing exposures during major storms like Superstorm Sandy, and whereas the use of Poison Center services saves residents both time and money, most cases are managed in the convenience of the caller's home, requiring no hospital visit. Now, therefore, I, Liz Lempert, Mayor of Princeton, do hereby proclaim the week of March 15th through 21st, 2015 as National Poison Prevention Week in Princeton, New Jersey, and encourage all citizens to pledge their commitment to ensuring the safety of themselves, their families, and their community. Okay. And now we have a presentation for this evening with Anita Firestone from Palmer Square.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the time of year you usually see me looking for approval of our annual events calendar, which was pre-submitted, so hopefully you had a chance to take a look at that. Hopefully the snow is melting and it's done, and we have a good kickoff with Pi Day, and we're scheduled straight through the year till the holiday festivities. We continue to work very closely with Linda and the police and the health department for road closures and different things like that. So hopefully it's just business as usual from our end. I don't know if you have any questions. I like to think I'm the easy part of your night.
Mayor?
Yep.
You are an easy part of the night.
Okay.
Thank you. The events all look like fun and like they'll contribute to the wonderful nature of our community, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
I have a quick question. Do you operate the yoga classes that sometimes operate out on the green? That
We support that through, since Lululemon's one of our tenants, and we help them coordinate with the clerk.
Okay. I noticed they weren't on the calendar. Do you just do that sort of
They don't have anything set at this time, but we will, anytime we add something, we'll update the calendar and send it over.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Levin?
I do have a question. Thank you so much. I had no idea that you guys did over 17 different items throughout the year. That was so impressive. Outside of the post office, there's a bicycle rack, and at that bicycle rack, there's about 5 or 6, maybe, bicycles that have probably been there for like 2 years. So I don't think the riders are coming by anytime soon. Is there any way, because what it's doing, it's the normal riders that ride their bikes that want to park there or lock their bikes up, they can't do it. So they're locking them up at different spots. And one bike was locked up where I saw a senior citizen almost trip trying to get up the steps because they couldn't lock the bike up at the rack. So there may be a way with some bolt cutters or something to probably...
We have experience with that. So, not with that particular rack. I can double check with our maintenance, but at different racks in garages and other locations, they kind of just stay there indefinitely.
Yeah, I don't think the tires will even turn down on some of those bikes.
Okay, so I can ask about that for sure.
Thank you.
It's actually a problem all over town. Yes, we have tons of bikes that have been locked up in our public spaces all over town, and not just on our public bike racks, but they're hooked up to trees and parking meters and all sorts of things, so.
You know, I believe that we are scheduled to do a sweep. I mean, apparently the police do periodically do that. You know, they go through and somehow they mark them, and then they come back in a week, and if they haven't moved,
Well,
they remove them.
It's something Mark and I have talked about, and I know that he's taken a look at some of the
I think the transportation,
bikes.
I mean, the TNT Safety Committee talked about it, too.
Oh, good. At least it's on the radar.
We got to clean our
Thank
own
you, Neil.
house.
Thank you.
And as one of the issues I know you have on your goals, that's one of the things that would fit into the downtown, some restorations. It's one of the things, hopefully, we can put a program together that will deal with both the bikes and some of the other issues down there.
Thank you. Good to go. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, we have, we're going to start our reports this evening with a report from Access Princeton, which is a program that has really swept Princeton with a storm, sometimes literally. And I'm welcoming Chris Iliff, who's the director of Access Princeton.
Last time I had a volume problem, so I'll try to stay here. Thank you very much for having me here to give you an update on what's happening in Access Princeton. I sent over some stats for you just to give you an idea what we're doing over there. You can see that the call volume has gone up quite a bit over the course of the past few months. These are statistics from when we launched, which was mid-September till the end of February. And mid-September, you can see it was a little low when we started tracking our calls, but since then, we've had some pretty good months. The call volume consists of calls received, and then we also deal with people that walk into the lobby. We deal with people that email us. So we have a variety of ways people are able to contact us through Twitter, through Facebook, all kinds of stuff. So when you see some of these issues being reported, they're not just phone calls that are coming in or being reported through the web. They're coming in a variety of ways. We also are providing notary service for people, so we have those people coming into the lobby as well. The web activity has been pretty good as also. We have our website, which is the widget that people can track things through SeeClickFix as the issues are reported. We also have a knowledge base that's on the main page of the town's website, and it's also a link on our portion of the town's website. And that knowledge base has between 350 and 400 Q&A, all information about municipal services and departments and things like that. Those are all the things that Deb and I will access when people call us. If they have questions about services, we can go into that knowledge base and we can answer their questions if we don't know it off the top of our head. The leaders for the past few months, our department had the most issues generated in the program, but that's because we enter every phone call that we get or any concern that we get via email or walk-in. Public Works was number 2, which is expected in this season or overall, and the police were number 3. We generated over 800 general inquiries, and like I said, they include those aforementioned issues. Broken parking meters, we have a system set up. People report them. They go into the police department or wherever they go, and we correspond with the parking authority. We provide notary services. Recently, actually it was this past Saturday, Affordable Housing had an event in the financial literacy, and we provided the registration for them. So our name and number and email address was advertised as being people to contact us to register for that event. It worked out very well. It was pretty much flawless. We were able to provide them with all the information that they needed for their registrations in a PDF form, and they ended up getting over, I think, 40 people registered. I'm not sure how many showed up, but it was a success. Christy told me it was a big success. Missed recycling pickup, we coordinate with Mercer County. We let them know whenever there's missed recycling in town. Public Works, potholes. And I know we're beginning and getting into pothole season, so I'm sure that number will grow quite a lot over the course of the next couple weeks. Missed trash pickup is number 2 for them. Snow plowing concerns, those were some that came in, and they were usually addressed before the person or immediately following the person reported them. And then signs needing repair. Police had a lot of snow removal violations. If anybody was looking and you noticed, there were quite a few in there. They actually had 55 reported in February alone and 14 in January. But
can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Was that 55 different people, or was there like one vigilante?
It's possible.
I mean, I was just curious, because I was surprised at how many
came in.
Yeah.
There are quite a few repeat people that do report them, and we know because they'll actually put their name on there, but most of the reports come in anonymously. So, we really don't know how they're coming in or who they are.
I want to jump in on that because this came up at our last Public Safety Committee meeting because it has been many complaints. In each of these, the police go out, investigate, then they have to go back 24 hours later and make sure it's been cleaned up. And it's been the Safe Neighborhoods unit that's been doing it. So I think there are people who are well-trained in how to go talk to. But the issue that came up was that in some of these cases, we would hope that maybe there's an intermediate step before somebody is, what was the word you used?
Vigilante.
Before vigilante calls, is there, we had talked about whether you all could put something on the website that said something like, consider lending a hand, that many of us may have neighbors who are traveling or are not able to shovel, and, is there a way to encourage people to think about pitching in?
Well, it's funny you say that. We actually had one reported early on one of the first storms we had. It was on Battle Road. And the comments went back and forth with the Safe Neighborhood Bureau and whoever reported it, and they just said, this person has cleared their walk as best as they can. The person that reported it actually commented back, and so did someone else from that neighborhood, and they said, well, I'll go over and I'll shovel it. And they went over and they shoveled it, and they took care of it the next day. So I think, and I understand what you're saying, and it does become kind of a neighbor against neighbor type thing, and it's not really what you want to promote for town. You want people to kind of work together. But I think it also works in the other direction, too. I think more people that see that maybe by what the police department is saying in their comments, they'll see that this person may not be able to do it, so they'll help out. And it did work in one instance, and one's better than none at this point in time. And it's just a matter of hopefully people will see that maybe more people need help, or and it could. I know it can go either way, unfortunately. Is there a way to advertise helping your neighbor? Sure. We could try. We can put it out there, but hopefully we're done with the snow for now.
Right,
we don't have to worry
well,
about it
it's a
anymore.
good time to think about it. It struck us that the Safe Neighborhoods unit, according to Chief Sutter, was basically full-time investigating these calls. And that's fun. We know this is an important safety issue, and, and certainly in certain locations, maybe a lot of people who are impacted if it's not cleared, but it does seem like some of this, as you said, that's a great story on Battle. It would be nice if there were more of those, too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I wonder if we could, I think we've tried to think of solutions, and we haven't come up with anything to help people who can't do it, because I am glad that it's being enforced.
I actually reached out to the university because C-Click Fix has this program called Snow Crew. I don't know if you've looked at the website, you see it advertised. And I actually sent the information to the university because a bunch of Yale students had gotten together, and they went out and they cleared walks and things, and I thought the little competitive nature between Princeton and Yale might work. She loved the idea, and like I said, hopefully we're done with the season, though, and we don't have to worry about it. So it might be something to look into again as winter approaches next year, and, she might be able to reach out. She said she forwarded on to the varsity club and a couple other organizations on campus. So maybe they'll look into it, and come next year, you might be able to get a group of university students together to do the same.
Well, we also got, I got an email, I'm sure everybody else did too, from the C-Click Fix company offering another service that had to do with snow.
That's the Snow Crew thing, yeah.
That's it? That's what you're just talking about?
Yeah, it's another platform, so it's something that people would have to go to do it, so rather than confuse everybody, I didn't really want to promote that too much because I didn't want too many platforms out there. We really want to keep everybody kind of focused on one area where they go to report stuff. But with that said, it is something that people could have used in town, and I did monitor it throughout the storms to make sure that there wasn't anything. There were people using it in Toms River and other areas that got hit hard with the snow. So in case anybody had reported something in Princeton, I would have been able to move it over to our area or to send it out and see if we could get somebody to help them. So I did keep an eye on it. But maybe next year, the university can get involved too. So the police department had a lot of them. They had live wildlife on private property, and then some traffic complaints that were not emergent that they were handling. But as you can see, people would say, they would comment and say someone's issue, and then we'd get other comments and say thanks for fixing this issue. The total issues reported monthly over the course of the past few months have grown, which is great. This is definitely something that we want to see. These are just some examples of what are being reported when it comes to potholes. There's quite a few of them out there, so there's a lot of them that are going in right now. And as you can see, February was a big month for us. I think a lot of that had to do with the snow that we had. This is where they're coming from, mobile web. A lot of reports are coming from there. Android app, widgets. That's on the website. People are using that. The iPhone app, the downloads for the iPhone app are growing. Every month there's more and more people that are downloading that. The SeeClickFix website, and then we're entering these reports as well through the SeeClickFix website, but they're coming up as we're generating them. And what else are we doing? We have a Facebook page now for the town. And as of the end of February, we had 221 likes. We are now up to 230 as of today. Twitter, we have over 340 followers. We're doing customer service training. It's just something that we're kind of branching out with. Deb Mercantini is handling that along with the IT department with the employee orientation. She's doing a 2-hour session on customer service with the staff. And in addition to that, she's also bringing in a speaker, I think next month, that is offering customer service training to the staff, to the fire department and first aid squad as well. So we're reaching out in that end and trying to get the whole town, all the staff involved with the customer service end of things. I was asked by the DVRPC, Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, to do a presentation, a panel discussion. So I'm doing that on Thursday down in Philly on citizen engagement in the digital realm. So it's myself and 3 other presenters. So I'll be down there on Thursday. I was also asked by Sustainable New Jersey to write a paragraph on their spotlight, what's happening in New Jersey about Access Princeton. So I've submitted that to them as well. SeeClickFix is working on an update. It's on the back end of things, so we'll have to do some training with staff. It's going to be rolled out in May, and they're going to be doing training in April, so I'll be touching base with people to try to update them on that. And then as of probably May, we'll be going out in the Welcome Wagon mailer. We'll have a full-page ad and information on who to call, and we'll be in that mailer with a 90-day follow-up after that. And that is about it.
Thank you. I have a question about, because now that the snow is starting to melt, we see all the potholes emerging, unfortunately. And what's the best way for people to get that to you? Is it better to have the photo? Does that
The photo is always great. If you can download the mobile app and take a picture, that's awesome. If you want to email a photo, we'll include it when we put it into the system. We've actually worked out with Bob Huff that he wants all potholes coming through us, because then they're going to get their crews together, print out the work orders, and hand them out accordingly and send everybody out on the road to do that.
Okay.
So.
Ms. Krumler?
Is there a way that people can embed the SeeClickFix page on their own blogs or websites? It seems like that would help the web promote the web
Yes,
site.
there is.
I mean, I don't see the link to do it or the ability to do it on the...
It's a 2-step process. I can get the link for you, but then we have to notify SeeClickFix engineers, and they have to take one more step to get it up and running. But it's
so people can't just do it on their own?
They can't just do it on their own. No, they would have to...
Because you can do that with the public SeeClickFix. I mean, is there a reason that we can't make it so that anybody who wants to do it could do it?
I don't know. I can reach out to them and I can ask them.
I think that would be good.
Okay.
Because I think we don't care if anybody does it. We want as many people to do it, right? So why make that little step that they have to get?
Okay, I'll reach out to them.
Ms. Howard?
A question for Mark and Kathy. One thing that was exciting, Christina, when I did the training was that this seemed like a great management tool, the way something comes in and gets tracked and you know how quickly it's resolved. And I don't know, Kathy or Mark, are you guys seeing it that way to use it to, when managing staff, managing staff?
And again, that's what I think is one of the great tools about Access Princeton. One of the things, one of my goals in its first year is really better utilizing that, just as you spoke of, as a management tool. Really seeing, what are the big issues that we have out there, and can we find ways of dealing with those issues ahead of time. So I think it's a great tool as a manager to really see these things, see how long is it taking to actually, complete the jobs. What are the roadblocks that we're hitting to deal with these issues. So I think it's a great management tool.
But to follow up on that question, I mean, has the rest of the staff embraced it?
Yeah, for the most part, they are. I mean,
Change is always scary,
difficult, right? I think that the more we start communicating together, I think that it'll be easier for them to see how easy it really is. You know, it's some departments use it more than others, so some are pretty well versed on it. You know, the police department and public works use it on a regular basis. You know, if engineering got something, it might not be first-hand experience for you, but you'd figure it out. It's not that difficult to figure out, so yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Crumler?
Just one more question. So what hours are you open for phone calls?
8 to 5.
Is that, are you staggering? I mean, have you considered staggering to make it a little longer, past 5?
I run a report when I come in the morning, and I see what time the calls come in. And we can tell by 15-minute increments as to how many calls actually come in throughout the time. And at the moment, there really hasn't warranted anything, you know, phone calls-wise, for us to be there later than 5.
Oh, good.
You know,
and you can leave, I've left messages, right? So, I mean, you can still leave a message after 5.
People can leave messages. On the weekends, you know, you can email too. You know, there's always the email option if there's ever something, and I check the email all the time on the weekend, so if there's ever an emergency or something that comes up. But in reference to the staff question, we are going to start going out to the departments and trying to work with them and see what it is that they might need from us, and just to give them an idea of how it is that we work and show them again kind of as a refresher, hey, this is how to, you know, if something comes in, this is what you can do, or, you know, give us an opportunity to see what kind of questions they get so that we can see how we can better serve them. So, you know, we're working towards getting everybody one big cohesive unit.
Any questions on this end? Nope. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. On the agenda tonight, there's 3 work sessions that are listed, but we're only going to be doing the first 2 tonight, the budget discussion and then a discussion about the signs ordinance. But we'll start with the budget discussion and turn things over to our administrator, Mark DeShield.
Good evening. As council is aware, we've been working diligently on our 2015 budget. At the last meeting, I gave council the preliminary numbers, both expenditures and revenues. We've been meeting with the council's finance subcommittee. We've actually held 2 meetings so far in reviewing the budget. We are still on track for an introduction of the budget at the March 23rd meeting. And what I want to do tonight is kind of review, as I talked about at the previous meeting, we have a challenge this year in terms of the increase in the levy. We currently see that it's going to be an increase that will be equivalent to 2.3 cents on the tax rate. In order to deal with the increase that we're anticipating, what we did with the Finance Committee is review a number of options. So we want to walk through those options with council this evening and get some feedback from council for the final preparation of the budget. Thank you. All right. So the first thing we do is review what alternatives do we have to decrease the current expenditures in the budget. And we looked at a number of ways to do that. First, we reviewed actually reducing the contingency reserve, which is what we call the up to cap amount, which is currently at $1.4 million. And each one of these we reviewed with the committee and also looked at what are the impacts financially to the town if we were to make reductions in those areas. One of the concerns there, if we do make a reduction in the contingency, that will decrease the amount of surplus that will be generated in the next year. And based on our policy, that's a concern that we had. The next issue we looked at, could we reduce another one of our reserves, the reserve for uncollected taxes? And again, the impact again would be a reduction of the surplus generated in the following year. In looking at these alternatives, One of the things, these both go against some of the financial policies in which have been established by the township, by Princeton. That being the case, and again, I'll get some feedback from council in terms of what they want to do with those two areas, but they do impact in the future years our surplus and will go against our current financial policies. Based on that, we tried to look at some additional areas to review and that we will be providing to council. One is a review of the vacant positions and whether we can make savings by reducing vacant positions. And the other one is to review other programmatic reductions, and that's really looking throughout the budget to see if there are other areas in which we can reduce. And those will be presented both to the Finance Committee and to the council later. Next thing we looked at, as you know, you can either reduce expenditures or increase your revenue. So we looked at what revenues could we look to increase. One area is to increase use of surplus, and again, that impacts our financial policies because it will reduce the amount of surplus that we generated. So again, that was a concern that we had. The next area we looked at was an increased use of the capital surplus. The impact there was if we reduce the amount in our capital surplus, we run into the problem of not being able to stay within our debt management policies, in which we're trying to stay within 1.5% increase in a debt service over the next couple of years. So again, we have a concern there of moving that way. Based on that, we want to look at some additional areas. And one is a review of all of our fees and seeing if we can determine are there some increased fees that we can look at. Two particular areas that we wanted to look at were fire inspections and rental housing inspection. One of the reasons there are increases in the budget in those two areas based on the need to complete inspections. So we want to look at those, see if we can recover more money based on the services that we're providing, both fire inspections and rental housing. The next area we're going to look at is the sewer fees, and then some various other areas throughout the budget to look at to see what we can do to increase our revenues. Again, that will be coming back to council shortly. And then finally, one of the objectives for the council this year was to move more expenditures from the capital into the current fund. We have identified a mechanism, and we're looking for council's guidance on this mechanism. What we are proposing, as council is aware, there's a tax appeal settlement that we have in which we will be receiving $200,000 in a tax appeal settlement this year. What we're proposing to do is to use that money to move some capital expenditures that are currently in our capital budget, move those into our current fund and pay for it through the $200,000 in settlement fees that we'll receive for the settlement of this tax appeal. So what that will do, what it will look like in the budget, you'll see the surplus increase, but it will be offset because of the $200,000 that we'll receive in the budget.
Can I ask a quick question about that? But the tax appeal, is that recurring?
It is recurring. What we're looking to do, though, because what will happen this year, it will be $200,000, and it does increase for the next 3 years, and then it will go into our base in the following year. So this is really a perfect opportunity to use those funds for capital, because it's almost like a one-time expense. If next year we need those funds for other purposes, we can use them for other purposes. It gives us the ability to make that decision on a year-by-year basis.
It's a total of 4 years, right?
I believe so. 4 or 3.
Well, it's for 14, right? 14, 15, 16, 17, right. We reappeal every year, but we've agreed.
Those were the areas that we talked about, and again, we were coming back to council on the 23rd and meeting with the Finance Committee. And again, I would also need any other areas in which the council would like us to take a look at and present to them in terms of alternatives. When we come back for the introduction of the budget, we will provide you with what we consider a baseline budget with some adjustments, but also provide you some alternatives that you can kind of pick from.
Thank you. I just want to also thank the members of the Finance Committee. I know this has been a tough budget year, so I want to thank Councilwoman Butler and Council President Simon and, Councilman Simon and Council President Miller for their work on this. And Ms. Krummeller, did you have a question?
Well, I thought, maybe you could just, especially for the public, give a little, the quick version of why the budget has increased.
If you look at our budget, the real drivers for the budget this year are one, the new trash removal contract. That has increased the budget by $200,000. Then there's health insurance and liability insurance. That has increased by $400,000. And then the other expenses, capital debt, that's up $400,000. And then our salary and wages are up $600,000, and we had discussion about why that's up $600,000 in the previous meeting. So really, if you look at the budget, one of the difficult things with this budget process, everything that's driving the budget is really fixed cost. So it's really difficult to find ways to kind of trim this budget because it's really what's driving it are fixed costs.
Are there any other questions at this point? Ms. Butler?
I do have a question about this, the appeal, that if we appealed for 14, if it is the 4 years, I thought we were going to see sort of twice this amount in 15. So we would have both the settlement from 14 and from 15.
I'm not sure when 15 is coming in, and it only goes up, when we looked at it, half of that, so it's $100,000 it'll go up. But I'm not sure when we will receive that settlement.
Okay, so we might not receive 15 settlement in 15.
Right.
Did you want, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Were you looking for guidance from the
Any additional guidance? Yes, we could, if you can give me guidance now, or if you want to just let me know any concerns or issues you want to address, we can definitely do that when we prepare the budget.
Mr. Muller? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. No, well, I'm just thinking in regard to the $200,000. Is that already agreed?
Definitely like to know that.
That's what. Okay. Well, I mean, I think it's fine. I think that we're lucky enough to have this come our way, and I think it's fine to use that for capital expenses. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially for items that won't cost us that much. So I think it's great.
I do too, but that's why I wanted to ask about recurring, because I think it's been much in the news when people take one-time monies to fill budget holes and then you regret it the following year. So, that's something that would feel good in the short term, but then cause a greater hole next year. And I think we've been trying to dig out of that hole with some of these new policies.
Then that's particularly why we're using it for capital, and that's why I think it's a great use of capital, because it's a one-time expense against a one-time revenue.
So great.
That's why I'm worried about putting it in for other reasons. This way, you have the flexibility to know come next year. We have the flexibility.
So not putting it in the operating. Yep, right. I would agree with Councilman Lieberman.
Ms. Carmelo and then Mr. Miller.
Just to double check, because I believe that the Citizen Finance Committee believes that our current surplus level is a good level. We're about on par with other towns. It's not too much and it's not too little.
I think the goal was between 15 and 20%, I think, is what we adopted as a policy, and we're right around 17% surplus, and it might be going down a smidge, 16 point something.
Right. And so unlike in previous years, I just want to state that I don't think that we should use our surplus as a remedy to this problem.
Right. One of the things that Citizens Finance has been doing is trying to model what the surplus is going to be, because it's not necessarily what you have left over at the end of the year is not necessarily consistent year to year, and so part of that involves projections, and they can help us with that. So we might have, if we anticipate that we're going to be taking in more surplus at the end of the year, then we might be able to use more of it up front, but you just want to make sure those projections are solid.
And we haven't heard that anything to predict that this year we would be getting
What we've done is we've already projected out and done a model for this year, projecting forward. And based on this budget, the way it is set now, it would keep us on a even keel with our, relatively even keel with our surplus. Any use of additional surplus would definitely be questioned.
I would support very much not drawing down on the surplus. It's a very slippery slope. The previous township did that several years ago, and it took 4 or 5 years to turn it around. So I would be very, very careful about doing that. But we do have another Finance Committee meeting scheduled for this Friday, I believe, at noon. And I'd suggest that one of the things we start to focus on are non-residential property tax sources of revenue. In other words, give a hard look at how we can increase our revenue without increasing the property tax. That doesn't mean that we give up any further discussion of the increase of the property tax, but that we push very hard so that if there is an increase, it is the absolute minimum that we can get to.
In our last Finance Committee meeting, we also asked Mark to look at the programmatic reductions and what that would be. Whether, we could decide whether or not we wanted to do that, but we wanted to see what his recommendations, and particularly with a fresh set of eyes as a new administrator, where we might look if, as an alternative.
Okay. Are there any other comments before? Okay, well, we look forward to the introduction at the next meeting. Thank you. And before we do the sign discussion, I realized that I moved on before we were finished with all of our reports. So I'm going to ask Ms. Howard if she has any reports. Ms. Kremler? Mr. Miller?
I believe the Affordable Housing Task Force is scheduled to meet this week on Thursday at 1:30 and in an executive session. And the work will focus in that session on further refining the description of the final 15 or 20 sites that we're looking at.
Mr. Leverman?
No report.
Ms. Butler?
I'd just like to say something about the Mary Moss Park, separate from the Lytle Street discussion. That is that we met with Ben Handbicki, I think I may have even reported that at the last meeting, to get some ideas to try to educate ourselves about what a spray park might look like and materials and how we would go about thinking about it, what considerations might be important, the filtration system above the ground, below the ground, et cetera. We are meeting again maybe March 18th, I think, 17th, 18th, to develop a calendar that really will be a schedule that includes a number of neighborhood meetings. It has always been our intention. I think, if nothing else, we learned from the pool development that neighborhood input is critically important. We heard from people in the historic preservation meeting, neighbors, that they kind of like the existing old pool, and we're happy to hear that as well. We don't have to spend the money on a new park if people don't want it, but it has always been the intention to go out and include neighborhood feedback, so we'll look forward to doing that.
Okay, thank you. I have a few reports tonight. First is I've reached out to Avalon Bay to invite them to come present a status report to council. They declined that invitation, and they will be submitting a written report to us. They said they would take our questions, so I said we would have questions to them by this Friday. So that's a call to all my colleagues here on council, if there's things that you want to make sure. And this is really just supposed to be a status report about the next phase of what they're planning to do now that they're done with demolition. Yes, Ms. Howard?
Mayor, didn't we, in the developers agreement, didn't we ask them, or maybe staff can respond, to come present to us?
Yes, the language in there was added suitable to the municipality and to Avalon Bay. So they're saying it's not suitable for them.
Lesson learned about how to phrase that in the future, I guess, right? Yeah.
But are they indicating that it will be suitable at some point?
They said once they'd be happy to come, once they have their building permits, then they will come. And it's a call for if there's anybody who's either here tonight or listening who wants to make sure that Avalon Bay includes something, addresses that in their written report to council at our next meeting. If you could get those to me by this Friday, and we'll be sure to ask that of them.
Can I ask a question about that? Are we holding building permits from them? I mean, or is this?
No, in truth, it's at the DCA, at the state level.
Right, so we're not withholding their building permits, and this isn't some game of chicken going on. And are you, Bob, continuing to work with them on a weekly basis as you have been? Have they been responsive to your Monday meetings and the other things that have been going on?
Yes, if I can just give a quick update. Jack West is here, and I have been monitoring the work very closely. They're continuing with the demolition. They feel that Unuzi is still going to be about another month to complete their work. Meanwhile, tomorrow morning, we're going to be having a pre-construction meeting with their site contractor, who's a different contractor, who will be looking to start in the near future. And they're looking to start with footing and foundation permits and utilities, but as the mayor had indicated, it's not the town holding them up. They're waiting for approval from Department of Community Affairs. Once that's received, our building department will be notified, and then the building department can then go through the process of issuing the permits if everything is in order.
And we certainly want everybody, I mean, we know our staff will, but we certainly want everybody to be doing their due diligence on this project. So sometimes it just makes it take a little longer.
Let me make sure I understood what you said, Bob. Did you say that they cannot proceed with putting in footings and lay trenching for utilities until they get permission from DCA?
They have applied to DCA separately. One application is for footing and foundations, and the second is for the building permit. And John Pettinati, our building official, hasn't received any approvals from DCA as of yet.
So they require approval from DCA to put in footings, foundation, and trenching for utilities?
No, the trenching for utilities is from the town, and we'll be discussing that with them tomorrow. Mayor, one other thing I wanted to mention is Deanna Stockton's here just to give a very quick update regarding what our plans are for evaluating complete streets alternatives as we move ahead.
Good evening. I hope I'm not interrupting the council reports. Just a couple of things. First off, it is now official that we have been the recipient of the federal Safe Routes to School grant for $300,000 to upgrade the traffic signals at Harrison and Hamilton and Harrison and Franklin. So we'll be looking to put together a press release on that by the end of the week. Also, I will be representing Princeton and the mayor at the Mayor's Challenge at the Federal Department of Transportation offices on March 12th this week. There's a year-long program called Safer Streets, Safer People that the federal DOT has initiated, and Mayor was the first New Jersey mayor of a municipality to sign up. So I'm going down to represent Princeton and get a little more information. And last but not least, Valley Road is our next capital project, and our experiences with Hamilton Avenue have taught us quite a bit. We've had lessons learned through that process. We've already posted a list of our capital projects for 2015 and 2016 on the municipal website, so that is available for anybody to take a look at and contact us if they have questions. We will be internally in engineering with the assistance of police and coordination with Public Works, putting together design alternatives for Valley Road. That we will then prepare a memo, a notice of a neighborhood meeting for the Valley Road residents. The notice will go to council, it will go to Bike Ped, TNT, as well as property owners and residents on Valley Road. After that, we will actually have the neighborhood meeting. There will be a little bit of a lag time so that Bike Ped and TNT can both evaluate the potential design alternatives so that they can then come to the neighborhood meeting and have a constructive work session with the neighborhoods so that we can air out all of the concerns, any concerns that the neighbors, property owners, Bike Ped or TNT may have on the issues, as well as engineering and police. And then what we've talked about is having 2 neighborhood meetings. If at that point there is not a general consensus regarding the type of design, then we would come to council at that point for guidance. But in the notification of all of these meetings, we would provide the design alternatives. We would discuss any potential impacts that the design alternatives may have, whether it be assessment for sidewalk repairs, whether it's removal of parking or changing of any ordinances that might apply. So we will be putting in a more thorough notification to the neighbors. We'll send out notices by mail. We'll post them on the website, and then as we gain email addresses, we can also add that as another way of notifying residents as we go through the process.
And one thing I understood, just because Valley Road, again, is another likely major spine of a future bike network.
Yes.
But we can't put this off until after the Bike Master Plan because there's outside funding we're getting to help with this project, and so it needs to be done this year. Is that right? Or can you just clarify why we're doing it now instead of waiting?
We have a New Jersey DOT municipal aid grant for a portion, to cover a portion of the cost for Valley Road, and the contract agreement requires that the project be under contract for construction by December 2015. So we do need to move ahead with the design process. We are working concurrently, and I'll be back at the next meeting with a resolution of support, but we are working on a grant application for that master plan, bike plan, that we would be requesting DOT to provide assistance in preparing with us. But yes, for Valley Road, we do need to move ahead because of the funding that's been provided.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm glad you raised that, and I can elaborate a little bit because we had this discussion at the Pedestrian Bike Advisory Committee last week or the week before, and there was this sense, obviously, because some of the defects in the notice process on Hamilton Road, on Hamilton Avenue, that there we would be waiting to see what a bike master plan said. But I think the sense was, to tell me if I'm accurately rephrasing what we talked about, but that there was this sense that if there is a strong sense that this is an important road and that these changes have to happen because of the funding, we wouldn't want to hold them hostage to the bike master plan. I mean, we've all seen people biking on Valley Road, carrying huge duffel bags of laundry to go to the shopping center, to the laundromat, and we know that's a really important road. So I think there was a concern that we wouldn't want to hold that hostage and miss funding opportunities on such an important road and so close to the schools too. So does that sound accurate? And yes,
Ms. Carla?
Right. I mean, I just want to go back because one of the things that you just said, I just want to clarify when you were talking about consensus with the neighborhood. I just want to make sure everyone understands that it's a consensus amongst everyone, not just the neighborhood. I mean, I'm guessing that we're talking about getting rid of parking again, and I don't want to give any, we might be talking about it, and I just think it's good for everyone to know that might be discussed, but also that even if everyone's uniformly against it, it doesn't necessarily mean that we won't do it. I mean, I'm not, I hate to, stir up things, but I just want to be upfront on that issue.
Yeah, I'll just add in too, I mean, that's right, we remember on Poe Road that there was unanimity among the people who lived on Poe Road that they didn't want sidewalks, but we felt as a council, or most of us did feel, that we had to think about the needs of the entire community and had to think 20 years down the road, and so we approved sidewalks. So I think that's right. I think what you're saying is it's not, unanimity will get us nowhere.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, in case somebody
Poe Road was in the
reading
master
too much
plan,
into
though. Poe Road was in the master plan. There is a difference. That was in the master plan, and that's why we felt comfortable forging ahead. I mean, I think Jenny is right, too, that, if there's a greater good to be accommodated, we will do that. But I don't think Poe Road is a good example, because that was in the master plan.
Well, hopefully the conference is going to have some useful information, and we can get a sense of what best practices are nationally, and help that with our process. Mr. Miller?
Deanna, are you talking about the whole run of Valley Road from 206 to Harrison Street, or just the run from Witherspoon Street to Harrison Street?
The actual construction work and design work will be for the Witherspoon to Harrison Street, but we will be looking at what a traffic signal, if it is approved by DOT, what impact that could have at the Witherspoon Valley intersection, because it could require changes to the section between 206 and Witherspoon that might translate into the intersection.
But does the proposed work include resurfacing the section of it that is north of this building between Witherspoon and 206?
No, that would be done hopefully when PFARS comes into the property, if we can wait that long.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. And I had a few more reports still. Following up on the Poe Road issue at Citizens Finance Advisory Committee this morning, we talked about the proposed change to the sidewalk funding, and the feedback from Citizens Finance was that it wasn't a significant budgetary impact. It was more of a policy decision, knowing that when you have a lot of small things that on their own aren't significant, when you add them all together, they do become that way. So it is a policy choice, but they sent it back to council. So if I could just be reminded, I guess, from, has the Public Works Committee already discussed this? And okay, and is this something that Finance wants to take a look at as well, or is it something that we should, people feel comfortable just talking about it as a full council and we can put it on an upcoming agenda?
I think we should just put it on.
Well, we have
We've
a
talked
finance
about it a
meeting
lot.
this Friday, so I mean, it's easy enough to talk about it, I think, on Friday.
If we were to do it for this year, then would it need to be put in this budget? Would the budget need to be changed in order to accommodate it, or is
We
it?
would have to adjust the budget by 50,000, the capital.
So maybe Finance then should take a look, and I guess since we're talking about it right now, is there a positive, just a general sense of positive?
I think it's kind of a simple, we don't really need a finance committee to tell us.
Well, the finance
tell us that, okay, it's going to be 50,000 more in the budget, and
But if we're making a policy going forward, I'd like to know what that means. That's one road. I'd like to know what this means in its totality.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was misdescribing it. $50,000 was the average annual cost
Expenditures.
total.
The additional. On top of the 50%.
Additional. So it's about $50,000 right now, and there's a lot of 50s in there, but that's with the town picking up half, and so you'd add in the other half. And then just to give a little bit more background, which I should have done, this is, right now, both the former township and former borough had a policy when we were putting in new sidewalk for the municipality to split it 50-50 with the adjacent homeowner. And we've run into issues with oftentimes neighbors objecting to sidewalk installation because of the cost, and given that one of our priorities has been to make this a more walkable community, given that we're building the road for free, or not for free, but given that the road is being built through taxes, why are we then charging extra for the sidewalk? So that was the reasoning behind the change in policy, and it was, I think people just wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be problematic for the budget. So, the change in policy would be that the municipality would assume the full cost of sidewalk, of new sidewalk construction.
Only new sidewalk, not sidewalk maintenance, so if, or repair. So if they're repairing a sidewalk or replacing an existing sidewalk, that would still be 50/50 unless the replacement was due to tree roots from the trees on the street. But otherwise, it's 50/50. So this would be new sidewalks. This would be like Poe Road, where there has not been a sidewalk before. We want a sidewalk, and we pay for that.
Okay.
So I think we've been talking about this for a long time, and I'd like to put it on the agenda as soon as possible because it could affect some projects this year, and some of them involve safety of the kids near the public schools, and so I think we can I would like to just have the discussion maybe at the next meeting if possible, because it's not a complicated budget issue.
Okay. Well, I think maybe at this point assume that it should be put in the budget, and we'll discuss it at the next meeting.
Well, I should be introducing the budget at that time, so
right.
That's the perfect opportunity to have that discussion.
I mean, I'm not entirely supportive of this. Because,
I think it needs to be written that way so we can discuss.
We can have a discussion about whether we want to do it or not, but there's not that many parts to it to debate. So we can just say, confront it and get it over with.
Okay. Okay, well, think about it before the next meeting, and we'll discuss it then. And then...
I'm sorry, I'm just going to be... Let's clarify. Are they going to discuss it Friday during Finance Committee, or they're not going to
We can. I mean,
okay.
If you want us to do that, we can.
All right.
I mean, we're looking...
Okay.
Friday, we're talking about the budget and how we might possibly have a smaller tax increase. So we're looking for increased revenues and decreased expenses, but if we want to...
Well, that's exactly why I said you might want to discuss it on Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a few upcoming events. The Environmental Film Festival is going to be starting at the library later this week. Or next week. That's always a really fabulous event. And as many of you know, former President Grover Cleveland is buried here in the Princeton Cemetery, and every year, I think on his birthday, March 18th, there's a wreath-laying ceremony. It's going to be at 11 a.m., and it's always a really great event, especially for history buffs. If you've ever wanted to learn anything about Grover Cleveland, I encourage you to come. And are there any staff reports, further staff reports?
Yes, Mayor. Just wanted to give council an update on the snow budget, and then one issue with the snow. Currently, in terms of salt, this year we've spent $165,000 in salt. We have a total budget of $200,000. We anticipate spending an additional $90,000. What that will mean is we will probably exceed the current budget, but we do have a snow reserve to cover additional costs. In terms of personnel costs, in overtime, we've spent $133,000 in overtime for our snow removal. But probably one of the bigger issues that we face, not this year, and it's not only here, but throughout New Jersey, is really the delivery of salt to municipalities. We've seen both in the last storm where we're not able to get appropriate salt. As a result, what we're going to ask councilors to consider is us actually building an additional salt dome for emergency purposes, filling that dome so that we don't put ourselves in a position of being low with salt and not able to attack storms the way we need to. So that's something that we'll talk about. Again, we'll be presenting to council to add to the capital budget. And I think that will be the prudent move moving forward, because we seem to have this issue on a reoccurring basis each year, particularly with salt delivery.
Yeah. Ms. Crummer?
Can you run through the salt numbers again, real quick? I'm sorry.
We spent 165. Budget is 200,000. And then we're going to expect to anticipate probably another 90,000.
90 right now, or is this 90 that you're going to purchase in the fall for next winter?
This will be now plus filling up the dome.
Ms. Crummer?
So did the shortage of salt affect the ability of our road crews? I mean, did it actually,
Absolutely.
it made the roads slipperier because we didn't have enough salt?
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about that too? Is that why, does that impact the ability? It seemed as if we weren't getting down, able to plow down to the street.
That's absolutely why you get to that point, particularly if you're not able to pre-salt the roads. You get that compacted snow on the roads. So that's some of the reasons why you'll see that.
Are there any other staff reports? Nope. Okay. All right, so now we'll move on to the sign discussion, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Crumiller to introduce as a member of the Code Review Committee.
So basically, chime in, Joe and Bernie, if I missed something, but we're looking to the council. What? Yes, I mean, they're queued up to answer technical questions, which we'll need. But I just wanted to let the council know what some of the decisions that we've already made that we're kind of assuming are no-brainers, but if they're not, let us know. So, because there are a few different aspects to the sign ordinance. The permanent signs are really governed by zone-specific rules and other rules, and we're not proposing changes to those. We're saying keep those zone-specific, regulations for permanent signs. And then the permit process for signs, we're proposing streamlining, but basically not changing. Would you say that? So the temporary signs are another matter. And even those, some of the things seemed pretty simple. I'll save the best for last. One thing is the contractor signs right now are allowed, technically they're allowed in the borough, and they're not authorized in the township, but people do them in both, and we're proposing using the borough regulations for those. There are some regulations around those, and we're going to keep them. We're suggesting keeping them. So that's one thing that maybe people want to change. We're talking about when people put signs in their yard, when somebody's working on their property, they're allowed to put up signs in their yards, not on the public right-of-way.
But you're saying that's different in the former borough and former township?
The township doesn't address it, so really they're not allowed in the township. But I think nobody knew that, maybe.
So the recommendation is to
allow it.
To expand the former borough one so that it would just be clear and we'd have something on the books.
Yes. So does everybody think that's okay?
And what would be what is the enforcement mechanism?
Lee? Derek? Lee, do you want to sit down at the table? Or?
Yeah, why don't you sit?
Because you'll probably be called on again.
And is there a time limit to how long you can have them posted?
Very good point.
I think there is, yeah.
What we were recommending for contractor signs was that you follow the borough procedure, but that we felt you need to regulate it a little bit better. So we would regulate probably, and we don't have a number, but how many signs? Because some places have, 10 different contractors. Sometimes they're there forever, the signs. So what we'd like to do is introduce some sort of time limit, either tied to when somebody gets a CO or not to exceed, 3 months or 6 months and the like. The enforcement that you asked about is done by the zoning officer. It's difficult to enforce right now in the borough. There's not a time limit, is there really? It's when the work is done, and you never know. And that's why some of those signs seem to be up there forever. That's why we'd like to tie it to a CO or a definite period of time. In the township, what's been done as practices, it's just been low on the enforcement level. The ordinance is silent about it. Usually those signs are up and then they're gone by the time Derek can get around to doing some sort of enforcement. So what we'd recommend is that we just have good regulations that make sense, that would allow a contractor to advertise the work for a short period of time and then be gone. As Jenny said, they're not to be in the right-of-way, so they'd have to be on somebody's private property, and that gives us a little bit more control. Signs that are in the right-of-way as an enforcement issue, usually it's Derek taking them down. But we'll talk a little bit more about that if you have questions. But that's the contractor.
Right, so that, the next issue is the signs in the right-of-way. So currently, all signs in the right-of-way are prohibited. They're just not allowed. But the enforcement mechanism hasn't worked that well. It's been really tough for the zoning officer to keep up. So we're talking about making it easier. Do you want to talk about it's going to be easier?
There's a couple of things. As Jenny said, first you have to realize signs in the public right-of-way are not permitted. Enforcement is done in one of two ways. The longer way to do it is the zoning officer issues a notice of a violation, requesting that the signs be removed. If they're not removed, he then would issue a summons or complaint in municipal court to whoever had the sign up there. That's a process that could take months. The more traditional route is he simply removes the sign in the public right-of-way because they're not permitted. He does periodic sweeps and just removes them as time permits currently. What we're recommending you consider is that the ordinance remain the way it is in terms of they're not permitted, but that we may want to put in the ordinance something that would sort of give the public notice and say, here's what's going to happen if you put a sign up in the public right-of-way. The zoning officer is going to remove it. Another way would be to talk about imposing fines, but allowing, just as a police officer can give a parking ticket, it would be a ticket for the sign, so it's automatic. There would be no noticing and chance to correct the problem because it just takes too long. We're looking at that. That could be a little bit time-consuming because then the zoning officer would have to go into court. Staff probably favors just removing the signs that are in the public right-of-way. There's also a secondary issue that a lot of the signs in the public right-of-way are for local nonprofits, educational institutions, charitable organizations. The de facto has simply been, I think those signs remain up for a couple of weeks and then they're taken down by the folks who put them up there, or the zoning officer goes and removes them. There was some concern whether we really want to start issuing fines to some of these charitable educational institutions.
I have a question. Can we distinguish between the two, or do you have to treat everybody equally?
I don't think so. With the memo that you got from Lisa Maddox, I don't know if it addressed that particular issue.
No, we can't.
But I don't think we can make a distinction between charitable and nonprofits and commercial enterprises. I think we're better off just saying none in the right-of-way. Enforcement will be as it currently is, or I think there are certain times of the year when there are more signs up than others, and that's when Derek goes and makes more of an effort to remove those signs. But again, it'll be based on, if somebody complains that there's, 5 signs, along a road, he'll go out and remove them. But we felt it might be better if the ordinance sort of announces that that's what's going to happen, so that people can't say, well, I didn't know that's what's going to occur.
Maybe we should put up signs all over the says, don't put a sign here.
Can you do something as a repeat offender, too? Because that might, typically the small charities are, doing like the one event, and they might not know, but it's not like once they get taken down, they're going to be put up again.
Repeat offenders, believe me. Almost every school every year has an open house sign up. All the, whether it's a 5K run for the Heart Association or whatever, Bryn Mawr book, there are a lot of them. We think we're better off just sort of saying, here's what's going to happen, we're going to take them down. If you feel you want to really make the point, we could probably put in some sort of fine. But that's something, I think, down the road, and we were looking for guidance. If there's a strong feeling that says, we really find these signs an aesthetic nightmare, they're a safety hazard if they're, blocking sight distances and the like, sight views. Maybe a fine would be appropriate, and we may want to have a little bit of both. But at this point, our concern was we didn't really want to have, there are a number of institutions and charitable organizations that put up a sign, and then they're gone in 2 weeks. And, that's not so terrible, but you can't really write in an ordinance that says you're allowed to do it for 2 weeks, because then it gets out of hand. I think our enforcement will be, based on complaints, and then as Derek and the rest of us are out, there will be more enforcement when there are more of them up. And I think putting in the ordinance, that's what's going to happen, that he's going to take them down, is probably the most efficient way.
Yeah, the committee, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is not a new problem. It's been a persistent problem, and I recall that we had one gentleman who came repeatedly to the former township committee meetings, Dr. Frank, and raised it once or twice a year. And I'm now convinced that what's happening here is that not-for-profit organizations and for-profit organizations are using public property for advertising. And I feel that's completely inappropriate for both, not distinguishing one from the other. I think if people want to have their front yard, their own private property used for advertising, and it meets the zoning requirements, so be it. That's their choice. But I think it's our decision to determine whether or not public property should be used for advertising, and how it should be used for advertising, and how it should be enforced by requiring registration and charging a fee for the use of the public property, or by fining people for violating the ordinance.
Right, I think the committee felt pretty strongly that we just wanted to prohibit the signs and also start enforcing it and stop seeing all these signs all over.
Agreed.
Another one that seemed fairly simple is the signs for back doors in some of the stores in the downtown. Right now, they're only allowed to have one sign, and we thought it would be okay to have a back door sign for those, so people could, to mark the entrance to their store. And then the freestanding signs on the books in the downtown, they're allowed to, establishments are permitted to have a freestanding sign, but there aren't very many of them, and so we thought that it would be better just to get rid of them and not allow them.
Yeah, there's a second part to that. We're concerned for pedestrian and bicycle safety. Freestanding signs are permitted in the downtown areas. That's a sign on a post, sort of sticking out. However, the ordinance then says that the maximum height is 4 feet. So somebody's going to walk into it, a bicyclist is going to drive into it. The 4-foot height makes no sense. It's a safety hazard. If you think about downtown, there are very few freestanding signs. I think I counted 1 or 2.
And those we would allow, right? If they're already there.
They're grandfathered. They're allowed to remain. I think the paint store, Morris Maple, has one, but it's much higher. It's just the new ones. We probably should have caveated. A lot of these ideas came out of the subcommittee meeting. I really think we're going to need to probably meet with the Merchants Association.
Can you speak into your mic, because I think we're losing you.
I think we need to meet with the Merchants Association to talk about some of the signs, because they may have other ideas with freestanding. At a staff level, we said, do you want to allow some sort of freestanding sign that's attached to the building that would be parallel to the building to provide more visibility? Jenny mentioned the back door sign. Some of us also felt we were thinking of tying it to, if you have a back door and it has public access, then there could be an argument made, but it helps people know where to park. So maybe it's if you back up on a parking lot, you should have some sort of, so people know where in the lot they might want. So I think there may be some iterations of the sign ordinance that we're going to go through with you, and any thoughts you have, it would be great to hear. I think Jenny and Joe and Bernie, we may need to take this to the Princeton Merchants Association.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Give them some of our thoughts, get some of their thoughts as to where we want to go.
Right, so I think we covered all of them except the big one, and the big one is the A-frame sign ordinance. So right now, A-frame signs downtown are allowed, technically, they're only supposed to be up for 14 days, and they're supposed to be for a special sale or special menu item or something like that. But there's been a proliferation of them, and I know I've gotten a lot of complaints from people about all of the signs. The 14-day limitation is like virtually impossible to enforce. I mean, so they just end up staying around, and they blow over, and I mean, the store owners who have them should know that. I know we get complaints about how they're unsightly, so we need to decide, like, do we just prohibit them, or what are some of the options that we could do to improve the situation of runaway signs in the downtown?
Did you guys come up with some ideas for that?
Well, I think you have a basic policy decision of whether you're going to want them or not. And again, I think we need to talk to the merchants a little bit more about how valuable they are. The sandwich board signs, the A-frame signs, it's been on the books for years as something that's been permitted. So you need to be aware of that. If you're going to permit it, there are some safety issues that we would like to address, and some of those get at sort of how unsightly some of them may be. We'd recommend that you tighten up the size that's permitted, maybe make them a little bit smaller. We'd also recommend that we institute some sort of clear space around them so that it's not blocking pedestrian. On a busy weekend, a lot of those signs block the flow of pedestrians, or that we would want to see maybe that it's tied to the storefront so that it's closer to the storefront and it's not in the middle of the sidewalk. So there are a number of things we can do. Again, we'd like to hear more from the merchants. We may want to put in something. A lot of stores are now just putting out a simple easel with a sign on it. When the wind blows, it gets knocked down, it gets blown around, so we may want to put in something about anchoring it somehow. As Jenny indicated, we are concerned. Right now, the ordinance says you can have the signs up for 14 consecutive days. We don't know when that really begins, and the cure would be, okay, I'll take it down for a day, and then it's back up for another 14 days. So I don't know what we've really achieved with the 14 days. So I think if we're going to allow it, we should allow it. The ordinance also says something about it's supposed to be changeable copy and there to, advertise specials, and that's not really happening, and that's tough to enforce, both in terms of knowing, checking what each sign says, and when you regulate the content of a sign, it gets into some First Amendment issues that we'd like to stay away from.
So I would like to hear from the other council members about what they think about this.
Well, I think I'm feeling like I missed a meeting or something, but I don't think that I did, because I don't think that, I thought we ended up more in the position that we were not in favor of the A-frame signs.
Right, that we just wanted to get rid of them.
Ugly streetscape. We've been sent picture after picture email that they've been knocked over. They're not particularly attractive, and they're really not allowed. It's an enforcement issue, but we can't, do we want to devote the person power to enforce that, or do we just not want to allow them? If you look at other municipalities that don't have them, it's a much more attractive streetscape, I think. So, and I know if we go to the merchants are going to scream. They're going to say they need them for their business, et cetera. So, I mean, we can go to the merchants and listen to them, or the merchants can come and talk to us. But I think that I can pretty much guess what they're going to say, because it's what they said when we talked about it, I think, in the former borough, so.
Maybe the memo wasn't worded strongly enough. It does say the decision is either prohibit them or put in additional regulations.
I was wondering if it was legal, if it would be legal to, I'm in favor of getting rid of them, but if we didn't do that, could we require that they're wood with slate? Could we have a certain sign or?
I think
I don't know if you can regulate the material.
So I just want to give.
You can't regulate the material of the sign, I don't think, but you can regulate the size, you can regulate how it's anchored, you can regulate its position. It gets a little bit more complicated if you wanted to say it has to be wood or acrylic or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say that we have the president of the Merchant Association here, and he probably has an idea of how the other business leaders feel. I don't know if the signs bring them dollars or doesn't, or I'm not sure. But I think it is interesting to know how they do feel. I don't think if we make them smaller, I think that's probably worse. I mean, I don't know. It seems like if they're smaller than now, you're going to trip on them or fall on them.
Well, I don't think we want to make them so small that you trip or fall. If you walk down Nassau Street or some of the streets just off of downtown, there's a big variety of signs. Some of them are 2 by 3. I think I saw one that might be 5 feet tall.
Okay.
So some of them are a little bit bigger than you would think.
Yeah.
I think I saw one that's like 5 by 4, or maybe 5 by 3. So we were thinking more to shrink them a little bit more on the 2 to 3, 4 foot in height, as opposed to 4 or 5 feet. But again, I agree with you, Lance. I think all of these should go, to the Merchants Association to get some feedback, and then we can report back to council.
Ms. Howard?
Great, yeah, are we going to allow public comment now, or is the...
well, why don't we finish going through everything, and then we'll get feedback.
And maybe I have a high tolerance for clutter, and if you've been to my house, you might agree, but I'm not bothered, and, going back even to the kiosks, I'm not bothered by the colorful nature, and I haven't heard complaints, and I don't know that I perceive it as a safety issue, and I would worry about enforcement resources. It doesn't seem like the highest priority given if it's Derek's time. So I don't know. I'm not as moved by this, but maybe having this discussion out public will unearth more concerns that I need to hear, and I do want to hear from other folks.
We've gotten emails with pictures of them all flopped down all over the sidewalk. They don't stay up in the wind. We have gotten a lot of complaints about them, I would say.
I'm thinking those are just from one individual, aren't they? Yeah.
Well, largely one individual, but they're not wrong. The pictures, they're scattered all over the street. They don't stay up.
Right. Well, he's objecting to that the current process violates our current ordinances. So he's right about that. But I think the question now is, what do we want the ordinance to be, since we're rewriting it? So
I think we pretty much have to change it because it's not enforceable right now. So the decision is to let them, to allow them with some limitations or prohibit them.
Okay.
So public, we're waiting to hear from the public. Email us.
Well, I just want to make sure we get through the full
I think
list of issues.
We covered everything. There's, basement and sign.
We were going to allow those, and they're remaining the same.
Yeah, the same.
For the most
don't change
part,
anything.
The signs we're not touching. If you were in a district in terms of the size, the height, we're leaving it alone. This memo flags those areas where there's going to be where we're contemplating some change, and I think the basements and above floors we were going to just leave alone. We're going to simplify the process, just briefly to give a little bit more background. In the borough, it's pretty straightforward. If you comply with the zoning, you get a zoning permit, and then you go and get your construction permit. In the township, there are 3 levels of different signs, 2 of which you get a zoning permit and you go build your sign. The 3rd kicks into a minor site plan, which then SPRAB would have to review and approve. We looked at those applications. They've all been approved by SPRAB with little or no change, so we're recommending we just get rid of that provision and just allow one sign based on the largest that would be permitted. There didn't seem to really be a reason to make somebody go and get a minor site plan approval because they wanted, 3 more square feet or 5 more square feet of sign. The sandwich board signs, we anticipated having some good discussion. It was nice to see. I think most of you agreed that having some sort of signage on the back of the store where there's a parking lot made sense. So, I mean, and again, we'd like to hear from the merchants. We're keeping the signage fairly small. We may come back with you with a little bit more. The signs in the public right-of-way, I think it's really more of enforcement, and you know, if we're not happy with enforcement, then it's resources to do that, or priority setting. But the signs are not permitted in the public right-of-way by any stretch of the imagination. Tightening up the contractor signs, how long they can be out there, how big they can be, and how many. We didn't talk about interior signs. That was the one that was missing. Currently, they're not regulated.
Can you make sure you talk, because I don't think you're getting picked up.
Okay. Interior signs are currently not regulated in either the borough zoning or the township zoning. And the committee looked at that and is recommending that we consider developing standards to regulate the interior of the signs. And there's two components to that, or two ways that we could regulate those signs. One would simply be allowing a percentage of the front window, that large plate glass, to be covered with some sort of advertising. The concern was it shouldn't be all of it. It maybe shouldn't be 50%, but that we may want to think about just regulating that front. The other part was maybe we need to regulate not only the front, but back a couple of feet. What we've found is a lot of times to get an extra sign, they're hanging, whether it's a neon sign or a wood sign or a paper sign, some additional advertising, maybe a foot, maybe 3 feet off of the front of the store's windows, and that acts as an additional sign, and we were looking at maybe regulating that. The concern was we really don't want to be in a position where we're regulating a sign that may be on a merchandise rack where it says sale or it says the name of the product, and you can see it from the public way. That's not something we felt appropriate to regulate, but we did feel that as you look at the window, or just back from the window where it looks almost as if it is another exterior type sign, that we might want to consider some sort of regulation there, and that would be something new. Those were I think that covers all of them.
Just explain that last part that you were talking about. So what would the regulation be, like the size of the lettering, or what?
No, what we would say is we could probably do it one of two ways. One would simply be a percentage. You're only allowed to cover 30% of your front window with advertising as one way to do it. Maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 70%, but that we want to hear a little bit more from the merchants on that. Or we could say anything within 3 feet of that front window would be regulated in some way. We've had a couple of instances where when you have a 4x8 plate glass window, and then somebody hangs just off of that within a foot of that plate glass window, the name of the store, it's even more bright and more prominent than their facade sign is. And that's what was generating the thought of we may want to regulate that interior signage for that. It's not about when they put up a sign in the store saying, the stuff on this rack is 20% off, and that would be set back further. It would just be what you see from the public way, but what is a de facto advertising sign that advertises more to the public and the outside.
I was going to say that, I'm sorry, the interior sign may have problems during seasonal. I know that there's times during holiday season that some of the stores cover their whole or larger part of their windows with signs of that sort, or decorations and so forth. I don't know if that would be included as a temporary.
Holiday, I don't know if that, we'd have to be careful how we word it. That would not be the intent.
Yeah.
It's really about sales of goods and services, or the name of, of the store, or the name of a product type thing, as opposed to a holiday scene or something like that.
Or we can have an exemption for holidays.
Well, I'm going to open it up for anybody who's here tonight who'd like to speak on it, and, we will be setting up a follow-up meeting, too, with the merchants, but...
Right, this is because
just your initial...
Eventually, we'll introduce an ordinance, and that will be a discussion, and then we'll have another discussion.
Yep, come on up.
Good evening, John Marshall, President of Merchants Association of Princeton. First, for the record, I just wanted to note that we don't scream. That's number one. We don't scream. Number two, the visual, when I hear you say runaway signs, reminds me of a Gary Larson card. And I just love that. So the PMA certainly welcomes the opportunity to engage in any discussions and meetings, just to make sure this makes sense and it's right for everybody, from the start. We'd also love to be involved in any valet parking when that comes up and so forth. To tie in with what Anita said with Palmer Square and the calendar, the waiters race this year is moving from Palmer Square to the Princeton Shopping Center. It alternates every year. So that'll be on July 9th, which is a great event. And then finally, perhaps with this whole visiting bus issue, we can engage Access Princeton also as the registrar, perhaps when that issue comes up too. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks. David?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. David Newton, Palmer Square Management. I kind of do agree that in 20 years of managing the square, I've never ever heard of somebody on a bike collide with an A-frame sign, nor have I heard of somebody, sadly, on a board colliding with an A-frame sign, in which case I'd absolutely be on the side of the sign. And there may be some abuse of it, but there are also some fairly attractive signs in the downtown. And I'm a bit surprised, Miss Butler, that you take the word of one person who writes to you, but you don't necessarily come in search of me or any of my tenants and talk to us. And I just see this as a little bit of the disconnect that I sometimes hear on the council's part between the screaming merchants and the council, who don't necessarily listen to what their constituency has to say. And with that, I just feel that you go around the square, and I can't talk to the rest of the town, and you see a lot of very attractive signs, a lot of people struggling to make a living. I think as far as trying in any way to restrict what goes on the interior of stores, you start with signage, and then all of a sudden it's going to be what they sell and what they talk about in those stores. And I think, where do you begin and where do you end? And frankly, when there's sales, we have national chains, we have all sorts of different tenants, and we have mullions in our windows which already restrict signage. Obviously, that's a design choice on the part of Palmer Square or the planners or whomever. And I just think there's a side here where just the restriction side just becomes too much, in my opinion. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question, David? Do you have requirements about what the signs are around Palmer Square?
No, actually, I blame you guys for everything. So in other words, when people come and talk to me about signage, I say you have to abide by municipal regulation.
Right, and, but you don't ask that your tenants have wood with slate, or you don't do anything like that, or do you regulate the size, or do you ask them to have a certain size?
Certainly as far as the A-frame signs, absolutely not. But I mean, I really recommend, I really, as an invitation, invite you to come down, because I need an education on this, and I'm sure there are certain signs which are nicer than others. Okay, I was thinking of, in terms of niceness, there's something like the Farmhouse store, which is always is beautifully written, is kind of, in no way could I necessarily call it offensive. Okay, there's a company like Origins, which is well located at the top of the square, who very much requires the A-frame sign. A couple of years ago, when we were still the borough...
Why does it require the A-frame sign? It's right on the corner, and it's on a very busy corner.
It's because it's one of these things that, that tenants basically feel that they go that extra few yards in order to bring the customer in. And it's just one of those things. It's just, it's just their ability, to whomever they answer to, it may be some management in some faraway place or whatever. It just gives them the ability to say that we've gone that little bit extra in order to try and attract the customer. And you may be right. There may be a few signs around. I can think of one tenant in particular who puts a dirty, great big blackboard in the middle of the sidewalk, and maybe they need to be, the size of things may need to be talked about. But for the most part, the A-frame signs aren't unattractive, and I don't think they litter the landscape. But again, like everything else, I always look forward to the dialogue with the council on this matter. But there's a couple of years back when we were still the borough and the township, when we actually talked, you were probably on the council at the time, we talked about the matter of quasi-retail tenants who were on the second floor. To bring matters up, and it was actually brought to us because there was warring language schools, both who found themselves in second floor locations, and one was allowed to put, is this correct, Mr. Solo? One was allowed to use an A-frame sign and one wasn't, and they went to war with each other. So one of them took the